Hi, welcome to my complete Aglaea guide. Aglaea is the newest 5-star coming in the second phase of version 3.0. She is our first limited Remembrance unit and is our first look at what a Remembrance main DPS can look like. In this video, I'll be going through everything you need to know on how to build and play Aglaea, covering her best Lycorns, Relic sets, Planar Ornaments, teams, and many more. Before we start, I'll be giving away 2 supply passes / welcome moon to my subscribers at 7k subs, so make sure you subscribe. Starting off, what is Aglaea's kit? Since she is a Remembrance character, we will first start with a Memo Sprite, Garment Maker, GM for short. GM skill does damage in Blast, and GM's talent increases her speed after attacking enemies with Seam Stitch, while also taking action immediately after being summoned and regenerating energy when it disappears. As for Aglaea herself, Aglaea's skill summons GM, and if it's already summoned, restore its HP by 50% and grant a turn to herself and GM. Aglaea's ultimate also summons GM, and if it's already summoned, restore its HP by max. Additionally, this ultimate also will make Aglaea enter the Supreme Stand state, taking action, gaining speed based on the GM speed talent, and enhancing her basic attack. An icon will appear on the action order, and when it takes a turn, GM disappears and this state ends. Aglaea's talent makes her attack apply Seam Stitch when GM is on the field and deal additional damage to enemies with Seam Stitch. And Aglaea's technique summons GM, does damage in AoE, and applies Seam Stitch. Now for bonus choice abilities. The first increases attack during Supreme Stance based on her and GM's speed. The second retains one speed stack of GM's talent even after it disappears. And the third regenerates energy to half if it's not half at the battle start. For trace leveling priorities, you want to be focusing on your basic, then your ultimate, then your talent, then Memo Sprite skills, then her actual skill. Overall, Aglaea has a bit of a complicated kit, though most of it is due to Aglaea being our first Remembrance DPS, so in reality, in the future, it could get a lot more hectic. But anyways, one very crucial thing you may or may not have noticed is the extremely high cost of 350 on her ultimate. No, this is not a typo or a mistake. One massive, I guess we call it, feature of Aglaea is her stupidly costly ultimate. This means that the importance of her teammates, and honestly Eidolons too, makes her a bit limited as a unit to most players. Not to mention, in conjunction with the speed boost in her kit, this all makes her one of, if not the hardest character to build in general. Regardless, Aglaea is our first unit to properly scale up speed. Quite fitting for Remembrance DPS, as they can end up doing a lot of attacks really fast. She looks to be quite a decent DPS, especially if you can build her correctly. Speaking of which, now onto how to actually build her. Beginning with Aglaea's best Lycorns. Since the Remembrance Pass was just released this patch, we are not looking at much. Obviously, her best in slot will be a signature Lycorn, featuring a base speed increase and stacks per attack to increase crit damage and basic attack damage increase. Otherwise, we are looking at a new Remembrance Battle Pass Lycorn as a nice stat stick, and the 3-star Lycorn Remembrance, which actually features a 48% damage dealt increase, which is pretty strong. Genius's Greetings and Victory are both okay options too, but with Remembrance being better than both, it is not really worth using either of these two. Moving on to Aglaea's best Relic sets and Planar Ornaments. Her best in slot Relic set will be the brand new 4-piece Hero of Triumphant song. This features speed and crit damage increase depending on Memo Sprite, making this a clear winner in the best Relic set. For alternatives, 4-piece Musketeers would be a decent placeholder, and 2-piece speed sets would generally be her best secondary option, as getting the correct speed on her is very important, which we will touch on later. As for best Planar Ornaments, Banana Amusement is a best planner as it boosts crit damage based on summons, but Rutilian is still a decent option too if you do not have the new planner set farmed. However, a niche option can be Izumo if you're planning to run RMC with her. Next up is Aglaea's best main stats and substats. I want to start off by explaining a little about the speed tuning for Sunday. The ideal situation is that you want Aglaea in her ultimate state to be twice the speed of Sunday. So for example, if your Sunday has 134 speed, you will want 268 speed on Aglaea during her ultimate state. To get the base speed, simply minus the result of 6 times 15% of 102. The number 6 is the max stacks of GM's talent, 15% is from her ultimate, and 102 is her base speed. Therefore, the speed you want to reach on Aglaea outside of battle is 176.2 speed if your Sunday is 134 speed. And another thing I want to mention is that since Aglaea's light cone increases base speed, instead of 15% of 102, it is 15% of whatever the new base speed is. So 114 at S1, 122 at S5. TLDR, Aglaea's speed should be double of Sunday's speed during Supreme Stand state. But in reality, if all of these are too much for you and or you don't have the ability to get such high speed on your Aglaea, having Sunday being -1 speed of Aglaea will do the job just fine. And one last thing I want to mention is that you may also choose to go 1 rack on Sunday, if you want to have an extra turn for Aglaea to get full 6 stacks before her first ultimate. Thankfully though, her main stats are pretty straightforward as we're looking at the traditional crit DPS stat set. Crit body, speed boots, lightning bolts, and ERR/attack rope. Everything is pretty self-explanatory except the rope part. In short, ERR for E0, attack for E1. Even with Sunday plus Huohuo, you simply do not get enough energy to keep a decent ultimate uptime without ERR rope, so ERR is recommended for those without E1. Speaking of E1, now for Aglaea's best Eidolons. As mentioned before, Eidolons do play a part in making Aglaea truly become the unit that she is meant to be, and E1 does just that. It increases damage dealt to enemies with Seam Stitch, but more importantly, it also regenerates 20 energy whenever herself or GM attacks enemies with Seam Stitch. This makes this an extremely strong Eidolon, as this makes Aglaea finally able to properly regenerate energy for herself. I really do not understand how this is not part of a base kit, as without E1, energy teammates and ERR rope are almost a must, therefore really limiting the flexibility of Aglaea. E2 makes Aglaea or GM's attack ignore defense, which can stack. E3 and 5 are just trace levels, which include GMs, which is pretty cool. E4 essentially makes both Aglaea and GM even faster, and E6 increases lightning res pen of both Aglaea and GM and increases the damage of their joint attack depending on her speed. As I said before, E1 is an extremely powerful Eidolon, but I do want to mention that at E0, Aglaea is still a very powerful unit. The fact is that if you have the ideal teammates for Aglaea, the E1 becomes more quality of life rather than a must pull. Yes, E1 with ideal teammates pushes her even further in potential, but the units she wants are so generally good and so universal that you might as well save those E1 pools for them instead. And E1 vs S1 pretty much answers itself. E1 is significantly better, as if it isn't already obvious, no point of doing more damage if you can't even get your ultimate up. Finally, last but not least, we get to Aglaea's best teammates and teams. I want to preface this by saying that one massive downside of Aglaea is that teammates are not as flexible as many will hope for. Of course, many units can be used with her and they will definitely clear as long as everyone is built properly, but this section is for her best teammates and teams, so teams that will truly make Aglaea shine. So starting off, I want to mention 2 types of teammates that she really likes. The first are action advancers. Obviously, if you could not tell already, Aglaea wants to attack really often. Not only is it simply more DPS, it also benefits her kit directly. So action advancers like Sunday, Robin, RMC, Bronya are all incredible teammates to Aglaea. One key thing is that turn granters like Sunday and Bronya are usually not associated with units that are innately very fast like Zilla, but Aglaea is a special case, as if she is properly speed tuned, she becomes so fast that she doubles Sunday's and Bronya's speed, allowing you to still do the -1 speed strat, but instead of, for example, Aglaea into Sunday into Aglaea, it becomes Aglaea into Aglaea again, then into Sunday into Aglaea. And the other type of teammates she really likes are energy generating teammates. Again, another key point of Aglaea is an extremely costly ultimate. This means that to have a relatively decent uptime on her ultimate, you need to be running units like Sunday, Huohuo, and Ting Yun. Because without these units, even with ERR rope, she's gonna really struggle getting her ultimate back up, and it will cause a lot of time wasting in a fight. Now with all that out of the way, the best teams start with Aglaea, Sunday, Robin, and Huohuo. If you didn't realize already, Sunday is by far Aglaea's best teammate. In fact, I will go as far as to say that without Sunday, Aglaea is not really worth it to play. The energy gen and the action advance to both Aglaea and GM are so much of what makes Aglaea able to deal damage. Without it, she feels really bad. Robin is another unit that really benefits Aglaea. As you can probably tell, Robin really likes units that attack often, and Aglaea does just that. Aglaea wants buffs and action advance, and Robin does just that. A simple synergy, but a very strong one. And Horror is just the best sustain, as energy is the number one thing Aglaea wants. Other options for this team is RMC to replace Robin, as she also has an action advance, but also really benefits all freaking attackers. And theoretically speaking, Barney is able to also replace Sunday and Robin as well, but it is with a huge caveat that if replacing Sunday, the damage loss is quite significant, and if replacing Robin, it requires some really dang speed tuning. But otherwise, without Sunday, you may be able to get something with Ronmei or even Tingyun just for more energy. And for complete free-to-plays who don't have Sunday or Robin, you're cooked. Just aside though, this team may do fine for what you have. But remember, all of this is with the assumption of Aglaea at E0. If you have her at E1, go crazy. Even though her absolute best comp is still the same, you can most definitely start to use other characters like a better sustain, or even going for stuff like Super Break. So yeah, that does it for the Aglaea guide. This has been quite the complex guide and a whole lot of yapping. It goes without saying that Aglaea is probably one of the most complicated characters to build. Speed itself is already a pretty hard thing to fully control, even on the simpler units, but to boost it significantly and want to use action advances really makes this whole build a mess. Not to mention her diabolical cost of an ultimate. Regardless though, I really like her and I think she is super cool, so that's that.